The twin suns of Fex 5 blazed overhead, their combined heat pressing down on Reed Holden as he swung his duffel bag out of the hover car and squinted up at the crystalline tower that would be his new home. The structure shimmered like a giant shard of opal thrust skyward, its surface catching and refracting light into a spray of rainbows that danced across the pavement. Renting sight unseen had been a gamble, but the Institute's stipend didn't stretch far, and the price for Unit 731 had been impossible to refuse. Reed muttered the number under his breath, as though repeating it would anchor him against the sense of stepping into the unknown. The elevator ride was unervingly smooth, as if the cab floated on air currents rather than cables. At the 7th floor, a corridor opened before him, walls rippling faintly with bioluminescent veins of light. His boots clicked against the iridescent tiles until he reached the door marked with flowing alien script. Heart-thudding, Reed pressed the intercom. The door hissed aside with startling speed. She stood there waiting tall, humanoid, her skin a soft emerald that gleamed faintly under the corridor's glow. Amethyst eyes regarded him with calm precision, and her hair, long and pale as sea foam, framed her sharp, symmetrical face. The shimmering tunic she wore clung lightly to her form, shifting color with each motion, like a school of fish beneath the surface of water. "You must be the new tenant," she said, her voice melodic and oddly resonant. "I am Kakala, your landlady. Please, come in." Reed blinked, remembering himself, and extended a hand. "Reed Holden, xenobiologist. It's a pleasure." Her head tilted, a flicker of puzzlement crossing her expression before she clasped his hand in both of hers. Her skin was cool, smooth, almost glassy. "Welcome, Reed Holden. Your quarters are prepared." Inside, the apartment was a kaleidoscope of alien elegance. Furniture seemed grown rather than built, prismatic surfaces blooming in organic curves. Living flora lined the wall's plants with broad translucent leaves that released faint fragrances whenever he passed. A panoramic window stretched across the far side, revealing the cityscape, a sprawling lattice of crystal towers catching the sun's glare like a field of jewels. Kakala moved with liquid grace, the fabric of her tunic whispering as she led him down a short hall. Reed fought the urge to stare, his scientific curiosity warring with the undeniable pull of simple human attraction. She gestured toward a bedroom, where the bed itself appeared to grow from the floor, sheets woven from some silvery fiber. "I trust you will find everything to your liking," she said. "The sanitation chamber is through there." He nodded, dropping his bag onto the bed, exhaustion tugging at him after the long interstellar journey. But the moment he opened the bathroom door, he felt the odd certainty that life on Fex 5 was going to be nothing like what he'd known before. Steam curled around him as he stepped under the shower's warm spray, sighing as the grime of travel washed away. He was halfway through lathering his hair when the door slid open. He froze, suds dripping into his eyes. Kakala stood in the doorway, gaze fixed with frank curiosity on his naked body. "Stars above," she exclaimed, eyes widening. "Human male. Why do you have a mini Shai-Hulud between your legs?" Reed yelped, fumbling to cover himself. "What the hell don't you knock?" His face flamed scarlet, water streaming down his shoulders. Chikala appeared unbothered by his outrage, her head angled like a scientist studying a specimen. "Is that normal for your species?" "It resembles a juvenile sandworm, coiled and ready to strike. It's called a penis," Reed ground out, mortification making his voice sharp. "Yes, it's normal. And humans usually prefer privacy during this." Her amethyst eyes flickered with dawning comprehension. "Ah, privacy. My apologies. I forgot humans cling to peculiar taboos regarding bodily functions. I came only to inform you dinner will be served in half a rotation." With that, she withdrew, the door sliding shut as though nothing unusual had occurred. Reed finished the fastest shower of his life, heart hammering with a confusing tangle of irritation and reluctant arousal. She was impossibly beautiful, impossibly direct, and utterly alien in every sense. He dressed quickly, vowing to set firmer boundaries, and followed the scent of spiced food into the living area. They were seated cross-legged on cushions when the building shuddered. A low boom rolled through the walls, rattling the prism furniture. Alarms flared, and an automated voice announced in a language Reed couldn't parse, though the meaning was clear enough. Kikala leapt to her feet, the melodic lilt of her voice edged with steel. Raiders. Before Reed could react, she grabbed his hand, yanked him toward the wall, and pressed her palm against a hidden seam. A concealed panel slid open, revealing a narrow chamber. Another explosion rocked the building as she shoved him inside and followed, the door sealing them into darkness. Breathless, Reed stared at her silhouette in the dim light, realization striking harder than the blast outside. Kikala was no ordinary landlady. She had enemies, contingency plans, and secrets deeper than he'd guessed, and he had just stumbled into the middle of them. The panic room was narrow and dim, the air cool and faintly metallic. Reed leaned against the smooth wall, trying to steady his breath, while Kikala pressed her ear to a hidden speaker. The muffled thump of explosions still reverberated through the crystalline tower, though here it felt distant, like thunder rolling far below the horizon. "They are searching for something," she murmured. Her voice clipped, stripped of its earlier melody. "Or someone," Reed frowned, his pulse still pounding. "Raiders? In the middle of a city this size? That doesn't make sense. You've got a defense grid." Patrols. Kikala's expression darkened, her amethyst eyes catching the glow of the recessed lights. Patrols can be bribed. Defense grids can be blinded. If the right hands are paid, even the strongest walls become fragile glass. Reed studied her in the silence that followed. The Kikala he'd met an hour ago, the teasing hostess with wind chime laughter, had vanished. This Kikala was sharp-edged, coiled with tension, her shoulders squared as though she were preparing for battle. He opened his mouth to ask more, but she raised a hand, silencing him. Outside, the thunder of footsteps echoed faintly, accompanied by guttural commands in a tongue Reed didn't understand. The sound passed, receded, and eventually dissolved into quiet. Kikala closed her eyes for a long breath before turning back to him. "It's over for now," she said. But this was not a random strike. They came to send a message. Reed swallowed hard, forcing himself to think like the scientist he was. Then who was the message for? Her silence was answer enough. When at last she led him from the chamber, the apartment was a mess. A wall panel hung loose, scorched black. The living flora drooped, bruised by the shockwave. Kikala surveyed the damage with a tight jaw, then moved methodically, straightening what she could, sealing the door, resetting alarms. Reed followed her numbly until she paused to study him. "You are unharmed," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," he admitted, though his legs still trembled. "Not sure my nerves are intact, but physically I'm fine." "You've done this before, haven't you? Hidden rooms, raids, knowing exactly what to do." Her lips curved in a wry smile that didn't touch her eyes. "I have lived long enough to learn that survival requires preparation." Reed wanted to press, to demand explanations, but exhaustion and adrenaline made him clumsy. Instead, he managed a weak grin. Hell of a first night in the new place. That earned him a flicker of genuine amusement. "Fex 5 welcomes you warmly, human." She poured him a glass of the fizzing purple drink from earlier and slid it across the table. "Drink. You'll need it." They sat across from each other in the disheveled living space, the scent of charred air mixing with the sweet tang of alien spices. Reed found his gaze drifting again to the faint pattern of scales across her cheekbones, to the way her hair, shimmered even in the dim light. She caught him looking and didn't look away. "You wish to ask questions," she said softly. "I do," Reed admitted. "But I'm not sure you'll answer." Kaikala tilted her head, studying him with that unnerving directness. "Perhaps I will. Curiosity is a trait I value. But some truths carry weight, Reed Holden. Heavier than you may be ready to bear." The room hummed faintly around them, the crystalline walls alive with the memory of the attack. Reed lifted his glass and swallowed the strange, sparkling liquid, meeting her gaze over the rim. He didn't look away. "Try me," he said, for the first time. A shadow crossed Kikala's composure fear, fleeting but unmistakable. She looked down at her drink, fingers tracing the rim, then whispered as if to herself, "Fok will not forgive me for this." Before Reed could ask who Fok was, the building shuddered again, not from an explosion this time, but from the echo of his own heart, suddenly certain that whatever he had stepped into was far larger than a simple rental. Agreement. The next morning dawned bright and merciless, the twin suns rising like twin blades above the skyline. Reed sat at the window of his new apartment, staring down at the glittering city while his mind replayed the night's chaos. The crystalline towers looked serene now, their facets catching sunlight in dazzling bursts. But all he could hear was the echo of explosions, the rush of Kikala's hand pulling him into the hidden chamber, and that quiet name whispered like a curse Fok. He rubbed a hand over his face, wishing he could scrub away the unease. He had come to HFY for research, to study alien flora and crystalline lattice formations, not to get tangled in political vendettas. Yet here he was, already neck-deep. Behind him, the soft swish of fabric marked Kikala's arrival. She carried herself as if the night had not rattled her at all, her hair falling in perfect seafoam waves, her tunic today a deeper green that shifted like forest shadows. But Reed noticed the faint tightness around her eyes, the way her gaze swept the apartment as though searching for invisible cracks. "You didn't sleep," she observed. "Neither did you," he countered, her lips curved faintly. "You are perceptive for a human." She set down 2 steaming cups, fragrant with a sharp spiced aroma. "Drink. It steadies the mind." Reed took the cup, inhaling the alien scent, and tried to relax. But his thoughts drifted to the moment in the panic room, a brush of her shoulder against his, the sudden, intimate awareness of her presence. He shoved the memory down, reminding himself of the vow he'd made before leaving Earth. No distractions, no entanglements. Still, his eyes betrayed him, tracing the faint scales along her cheekbones, the curve of her lips. He caught himself staring and looked away quickly. Kikala tilted her head, a predator scenting weakness. "You are troubled." He barked a short laugh. "That obvious?" "To me, yes." Her tone softened. "Perhaps you're regretting your decision to live here." "No," Reed said too quickly, then sighed. "Confused, maybe. I came for research, not to end up hiding from raiders in a panic room." And he stopped himself, heat rising to his face. "And—" her eyes gleamed with mischief. "And my landlady keeps barging into bathrooms to ask about my anatomy." He muttered. Her laugh chimed, right as struck glass. "Ah, yes, the mini Shai-Hulud. You are still embarrassed." Reed groaned, burying his face in his hands. "You're never going to let that go, are you?" "Never," she said, her smile turning sly. "It is far, too. Intriguing." The way she lingered on the word made his stomach flip. He set his cup down carefully before his trembling fingers betrayed him. Before he could respond, a chime sounded at the door. Kikala's smile vanished, replaced by a wary stillness. She crossed the room and pressed her palm to the sensor. The door slid open to reveal 3 humans in the distinctive blue uniforms of the Xenobiological Research Institute. "Reed!" The woman in front rushed forward, clasping his arm in relief. Thank goodness. We came as soon as we heard. Liz, Reed said, startled, then glanced at Kikala. She stood tall, face composed, but her eyes glittered with something sharp defensiveness, maybe even challenge. The woman noticed, too. She extended a hand politely. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Chun, Reed's colleague. And you must be? Kikala, she said smoothly, her voice shifting into its melodic public register. His landlady. And his friend. Reed felt the weight of the pause, the deliberate precision of her words. Elizabeth's brows arched slightly, curiosity sparking. Friend, she echoed. I see. In that moment, Reed realized the truth he had been avoiding. Kikala wasn't just his landlady, wasn't just an exotic curiosity. She had pulled him into her orbit with laughter and danger and secrets. And despite his vows, despite his fear, he was already caught. The turning point was clear as sunlight. Whatever happened next, he would not be able to keep his oath. Not here, not with her. The city had a way of hiding its scars. By the following evening, the streets below Reed's window bustled, as if no raid had rattled the crystalline towers. No explosions had left scorch marks on walls. But Reed knew better. Behind the sparkle and hum of Fex 5 lay tension coiled tight as a spring. He could feel it in Kikala's silence, in the way her eyes kept flicking toward the horizon, as though expecting shadows to arrive with the next gust of wind. Elizabeth Chun and the two other scientists, Rayesh Patel and Mikhail Volov, had stayed long after their arrival, peppering Reed with questions, veering between concern for his safety and fascination with his developing relationship with Aphelion. Kikala tolerated it with her public smile, but Reed noticed the way her hands curled when they spoke of her like a specimen. At last she dismissed them with grace, and Reed was left with her again, the room dim except for the glow of the living flora on the walls. That was when she told him. Fock will not stop, she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the window. He has too much pride. To see me here with you, she broke off, her throat working. He will see it as a betrayal he cannot forgive. Reed shifted uneasily, the name still strange on his tongue. He's your ex, more than that. She turned to face him fully now, her amethyst eyes glinting. Fock is a high official. My family arranged our bond long ago, but I refused him. He never forgave me for it. I fought. If I lived quietly, if I became a landlady and nothing more, he would lose interest. I was wrong. Reed's jaw clenched. So the raid wasn't about money, wasn't random. It was him, trying to send a message. Her lips twisted in a bitter smile. Yes, that I am his, whether I choose it or not. The words sent a hot spike of anger through Reed's chest. He crossed the room before he realized it, taking her hands in his. You're not his. You've made your choice. And if he wants to threaten you, he'll have to go through me first. Kikala's eyes softened at that, though a shadow lingered. Brave words, human. But Aphelion law. It is not so simple. What law? The challenge. Her voice dropped lower, as though speaking it summoned something ancient. When a bond is contested, the aggrieved may call for a duel of 3 trials: strength, wit, courage. The victor earns not only the partner's hand, but the blessing of society. It is binding, old as our civilization. Reed swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. And he's going to call it. I expect nothing less, she said. He will demand I be the prize, as though I am an object to be won. That is his way. Her chin lifted proudly. But I will tell him the truth, that I have chosen already. Reed shook his head, incredulous. This is insane. You can't be treated like property. And I sure as hell don't intend to duel anyone for the right to love someone who already loves me. Her fingers tightened on his. And yet, if you refuse, the law will declare Fock the victor by default. He will claim me, and our people will let him. The room seemed to tilt, the air thick with the weight of inevitability. Reed's heart thudded painfully in his chest, torn between outrage and fear. But when he looked into Kikala's face, saw the strength there, the vulnerability she rarely let slip, his decision solidified like stone. "And I'll fight," he said, his voice rough but steady. "But not because the law says you're a prize. I'll fight to show them you're not. That you chose. That we chose each other." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then Kikala smiled slow, luminous, fierce. She leaned in until her forehead touched his, her voice a whisper that trembled with both pride and fear. Then let the trials begin. Outside, as if on cue, the city's lattice towers flared, their crystal veins burning brighter in the night, a herald of conflict stirring. Somewhere beyond those spires, Fok was already preparing, his eyes fixed on the woman who had defied him and the human who dared to stand at her side. Arena blazed beneath the twin suns, every facet of the crystalline walls glittering like sharpened glass. A crowd had gathered, Felians in iridescent robes standing shoulder to shoulder, their voices a low thrumming chorus of anticipation. The ancient challenge law had not been invoked in decades. Today, tradition would come alive in spectacle. Reed stood at the edge of the battlefield, his throat dry, his palms slit despite the cool desert wind that swirled through the open space. Across from him, Fok cut an imposing figure, tall, broad, his emerald skin marked with ceremonial scars, his eyes cold with disdain. "Human," Fok spat, his voice carrying easily across the arena. "You insult me by standing here. But soon you will kneel, broken, and she will remember who her rightful bond was always meant to be." Reed squared his shoulders, meeting his gaze with grim steadiness. "Kagala isn't a prize. She's a person. She chose me, and I'm not about to let you or anyone else take that away." The efficient, a robed elder whose scales shimmered silver with age, raised a crystalline staff. "By the old law, 3 trials shall decide: strength, wit, and courage. Let the challenge begin." The ground trembled as massive stone boulders rolled into the arena, conjured by hidden mechanisms. Reed blinked at them, then at Fok, who flexed his massive arms with obvious relish. Fok lifted a boulder the size of a hovercar and hurled it across the arena. It crashed into the crystalline wall with a boom, shattering into shards. The crowd roared its approval. Then all eyes turned to Reed. He was no titan, no warrior. His muscles burned just from pushing the smaller stones. But he remembered his training fieldwork as a xenobiologist wasn't about brute force. It was about observation, adaptation. He crouched by one of the boulders, running his fingers across its surface, noting the web of crystal veins running through it. A weak point. He closed his eyes, concentrated, and recalled the resonance mapping he'd studied in the Institute labs. With a sharp exhale, he grabbed a shard of crystal, struck the vein at just the right angle, and the boulder shattered with a thunderous crack. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Fok's smirk faltered. "Human ingenuity," Reed said, brushing dust from his hands. "We may not lift mountains, but we know where to break them." The efficient approached with a carved obsidian tablet, etched with riddles and flowing Felian script. Fok answered first, his solutions blunt but adequate, relying on memorized tradition. Reed stumbled on the script, but Kikala's lessons echoed in his mind, the way she'd explained metaphors of moons and rivers, how their language wove poetry into logic. When the efficient asked, "What is the vessel that carries all without ever moving?" Fok barked, "The ground." Reed, however, thought of Kikala's temple teachings, and answered softly, "Memory." The elder's eyes gleamed. Correct. One by one, Reed solved each riddle, not by rote, but by reframing, weaving human logic with alien metaphor. The crowd murmured, astonished, As Fok grew more and more frustrated, a hush fell. From the arena's heart, a crystalline spire rose, pulsing with inner light. The elder explained, each challenger must step into the spire's shadow and face the terror within their own mind. Only those who emerge whole are deemed courageous. Fok entered first, striding into the spire's glow. He emerged minutes later, his face pale, jaw clenched, eyes burning with silent fury. He had survived, but something inside him had faltered. Then it was Reed's turn. As he stepped into the spire, the world dissolved. He stood not in the arena, but on a barren field beneath a black sky. Before him lay Kikala, bloodied, her body limp, her amethyst eyes dim. His hands were covered in crimson. A voice whispered from the dark, "You cannot protect her. You will fail her. You will lose everything." Reed's knees buckled. The fear was primal, suffocating. But as he trembled, another memory rose, the feel of Kikala's forehead against his, her whisper, "Then let the trials begin." He clenched his fists, lifted his head, and spoke into the void. "I will protect her. I may fall, but I'll get up again. I'll fight and fight and fight, because love is stronger than fear." The darkness cracked like glass. Light poured in, and Reed stumbled back into the arena, gasping, his face wet with tears, but standing. The efficient lifted his staff high. The human has prevailed. By strength, by wit, and by courage, Reed Holden is the victor. The crowd erupted, 1,000 voices thundering through the crystalline arena. Fox stood rigid, disbelief etched into every line of his face. Slowly, stiffly, he bowed his head, conceding before all. Reed's chest heaved as he turned toward Kikala. She stood at the arena's edge, her eyes glistening, her lips curved in a smile, both fierce and tender. It was done. Against all odds, he had won not just the duel, but the right to stand beside her, not as victor over a prize, but as partner chosen and choosing. The roar of the crowd still echoed in Reed's ears long after the efficient staff fell silent. He stood in the center of the arena, chest heaving, sweat and dust clinging to his skin, scarcely believing it was over. Across from him, Fok remained motionless. The official defeat sat on him like a weight, his broad shoulders rigid, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, deliberately, he crossed the arena floor. The crowd hushed. Reed braced himself for one last outburst of rage, for violence, for defiance of the ancient law. Instead, Fox stopped an arm's length away, his amethyst eyes sharp and burning, and extended his hand. "You have proven yourself," he said, his voice low but carrying. "By our laws, by our trials, you are worthy of her." A murmur rippled through the assembly, shock and disbelief that the powerful official would concede so directly. Reed hesitated, then grasped his hand firmly. Fox's grip was crushing, but beneath it Reed felt something unexpected: respect. "Take care of her," Fok added, his voice pitched for Reed alone. "And of the child." Reed stiffened, his heart lurching. The words hit him like a physical blow. "He knows." Before Reed could respond, Fok released him and turned to the crowd. "The challenge is ended. The law is satisfied." Then, without another word, he strode from the arena, his cloak snapping behind him like a wounded banner. Kikala rushed to Reed's side, her fingers trembling as she clasped his arm. "You did it," she whispered, tears shimmering in her eyes. "You truly did it." He pulled her close, unable to stop the shaky laugh that escaped him. "I almost didn't." Her lips brushed his ear, her voice a breathless murmur. "But you did. And now we are free." The crowd's roar rose again, but to Reed it felt distant, like waves crashing against some faraway shore. All he could hear was Kikala's heartbeat, steady against his chest. Later, back in the apartment, the city buzzing with rumor and celebration, Elizabeth Chun, and the others crowded into the ruined living room. They examined Reed as though he were both colleague and miracle, their questions tumbling over each other, about the boulder, about the riddles, about what he had seen inside the spire. Reed answered as best he could, but his mind kept circling back to Falk's words. "The child," he murmured at last. Elizabeth blinked. "What child?" Kikala's gaze met Reed's. She drew in a slow breath, then placed a hand over her stomach. "Our child." The silence that followed was heavy, stunned. Rayesh's mouth fell open. Mikhail muttered something sharp in Russian. Elizabeth only stared, her eyes wide, her scientific mind racing faster than her voice. "It's impossible," she said finally. "Interspecies conception. No recorded case has ever been viable. And yet it is true," Kikala replied softly. "I confirmed it myself before Reed arrived. I had not intended to speak of it yet, but—" Her eyes hardened. "Falk knows. He must have learned somehow. That is why he struck. That is why he demanded the challenge." Elizabeth pressed a hand to her forehead. "If this gets out, Reed, Kikala, this will ignite more than gossip. This could shatter entire policies, force councils to intervene. Your child will be seen as proof, as threat, as symbol. You'll be targets from every side." Reed took Kikala's hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then we go. We leave Fex 5 before Falk or anyone else can use this against us." Kikala nodded, though her expression was troubled. "Yes, but not only because of Falk." She crossed to the window, staring out at the crystalline towers that rose like frozen waves across the city. Their veins glowed faintly tonight, brighter than Reed remembered, pulsing in time with some deep, hidden rhythm. "I have watched them since childhood," she said quietly. "The lattice of the city, the heart of Fex 5 itself. They are changing." Elizabeth stepped closer, frowning. "Changing how?" "Resonance," Kikala murmured. "It hums stronger when I am near. Stronger still since the child quickened inside me. The towers are responding, Reed. To me. To us." She turned, her expression grave. Falk's blessing was not surrender. It was recognition. He knows what I am, what this child may be. The room fell into silence, the weight of her words pressing down on them all. Outside, the crystal towers glowed brighter, their hum deepening until Reed swore he felt it in his bones. The city itself was listening. Night fell heavy over Fex 5, but the city did not sleep. From every crystalline tower, light rippled and pulsed like veins alive with fire. The resonance hum had deepened into a vibration that shook cups on tables and rattled the walls. People poured into the streets, their faces upturned, fear and awe mingling in their eyes. Reed stood at the panoramic window, his pulse echoing the thrum outside. The alien city looked less like a place and more like a living organism, lit from within, its crystal spires breathing in unison. He turned to Kikala. She stood very still in the center of the room, her seafoam hair drifting in the faint current of energy, rolling through the air. Her hand pressed protectively against her stomach. Elizabeth Chun's voice trembled, not with fear, but with scientific wonder. "It's responding to her. To them." The resonance field is harmonizing with her biology. Mikhail muttered a curse in Russian, crossing himself. "This is no accident. It's a selection. A calling." Kikala closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was no longer merely melodic. It resonated, layered, as if the city itself whispered through her. "This has happened before. Long ago. My mother told me stories, though I thought them myth. A line of women tied to the lattice, guardians who could hear the city's heart. But the line ended, or so we were told." Reed stepped closer, his throat tight. "Ended or hidden?" Her eyes opened, glowing faintly now with amethyst light. "Hidden. My family concealed it. When I refused Falk, When I chose exile over being his bond, it was not only pride I defied. It was the expectation that I would continue the lineage under his control. I became a landlady, a cover, a shadow of what I was meant to be. The realization struck Reed like a bolt. Then Fock didn't just want you because of some old betrothal. He wanted the lineage. He wanted the power of the lattice in his bloodline. Kikala's expression was both fierce and mournful. And now the lattice has chosen. Not him, not pure Felian stock, but me and the child I carry with you. The room vibrated as if affirming her words. The walls sang, faint harmonics rising and falling like the chords of an unseen symphony. Elizabeth staggered back, eyes wide. The unborn child. It's a living bridge. A hybrid resonance capable of binding human neural patterns with the Felian lattice. Reed, this isn't just biology. This is planetary scale physics. The child could stabilize the crystal network itself. Reed felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders, heavier than any vow, heavier than the duel. He looked at Kikala, radiant in the glow, and felt both pride and terror. So our child is... what? A savior? Kikala shook her head, her hair shimmering in the pulsing light. Not savior, anchor. The lattice doesn't ask for worship. It asks for balance. And our child will be the one who can hold that balance. A sudden boom rocked the distance warning flares detonating in the outer districts. Shouts echoed faintly through the streets below. Elizabeth ran to the balcony, scanning the skyline. People are panicking. They think the lattice is failing. Mikhail's face hardened. Fock will use this. He'll claim the child must be seized, controlled, before the city tears itself apart. Reed turned to Kikala, taking her glowing hands in his. Then we protect our family. Whatever this child means, legend, anchor, miracle, it doesn't belong to him. Or to the council. It's ours. Her eyes shimmered, tears mingling with light. Ours, she whispered, the word ringing like a vow dot. And in that moment, as the crystalline towers bent their glow toward her, as the hum deepened into the rhythm of a heartbeat, Reed knew the truth. This wasn't just love between species, or defiance of an ex-lover's grasp. It was destiny written in light and stone, in blood and resonance. Two worlds had found their bridge in them, and their child, not yet born, had already become the pulse of a planet.